Hey.
Hey, this is Tuesday, May 24th, third period, and we'll get into the Brovitalk for today. Pretty much the same stories as before. From my classes. Let's go with, so we finished off with from where we were yesterday. I was arrested. Anyone at 100 points and higher want to go sign, you can head on over. So at home, my parents had come up to talk to me, and so they took it well, the whole grounding me thing. I think I was grounded for like a month at the end of it by the time the whole thing got done. But their punishment was creative, which was making me go to school the next day. And that was about as painful as I could imagine something like that being. And going to school the next day was rough. Kids are mean. It's just sort of the way the world works. And so this is prior to social media or even cell phones, so friends had no way to contact me that night, and they didn't really have a way of spreading it to each other. But still, kids talk, and they talk quickly. So by the time I got to school the next day, everybody at the school seemed to know. And just walking through the hallways, there was little comments that people would make along the lines of either calling me thief, just right out to my face, or asking me about it, or they would give me the nickname Banaka or breath spray, or something along those, just that whole making fun of you thing that kids do. And it was rough. But it wasn't the kids making fun of me, I think, that hurt the most. It was little things that the kids did that I don't think they realized that they did. Walking into my English class, and I was in an advanced English class, with these kids I'd known forever and had been around for years, and the looks that they would give me as I walked into the classroom. And I still remember these girls as I walked by them, but looked up and saw me, and then moved like their pencil pouch and stuff to the other side of their desk, farther away from me. And I don't think it was on purpose. It was like sort of an involuntary thing. But it was just that whole, I can't trust you to be around my stuff because maybe you're going to steal it. And it was just what it implied that hurt. And then it was the seeing kids talk throughout the entire day. Not just the ones who talked to me directly, but walking into a room and seeing everyone turn and then stop talking and turn to stare at you. Or the kids down the hallway and you hear them laughing. And then when you look up, you can see that they're all looking at you. And it's one of those things where you know, like every situation, everyone's talking about you. And it went on for several days. My teachers never brought it up, which was nice. But other kids did nonstop. And it was like the talk throughout the entire day. Wrestling that day was also really rough. And what happened at wrestling is something that I think would get a teacher fired today or a coach fired. But then it was just something that happens. And so the day had been awful. And then that next day, that day I went to wrestling practice because it was the day after the meet. And apparently the coach was not happy about me getting arrested because, it reflects poorly on the team. Weird how coaches don't like that. What I found out later from friends is how the coach found out, which was on the bus ride. He was going through doing attendance and calling off names. And as he got to my name, he was like, Broviak! And I didn't answer because obviously I was not there at the time. The kids just started laughing. And he was like, where's Broviak? And they're like, he's not here. And he's like, I know he wasn't here, but he was at school today, so where is he? They're like, he's in jail. I'm like, what do you mean he's in jail? Like, he got arrested. It's like, what? He's like, no, where is he? He's like, no, he was shoplifting and he got arrested. It was the greatest thing ever. And so they started immediately ratting me out, and the coach just shook his head. He was like, are you kidding me? And they were not kidding him. And so he did not take very well to that at all. So he decided to take it out of me at practice. Ooh, I forgot to add real quick. I added a stupid computer that I hate. Pictures to the stories from yesterday. And so I'm going to show you guys the pictures real quick.
Oh, I don't know what's on these.
Are they your real pictures?
No. Googly pictures.
Alright.
But I figured they're nothing, right?
That's true.
When I was talking about the crawl space window, that's what I was referring to, where I was able to pull the window. It looked just like this one was exactly how I remember it. I had that little window, and I had to crawl over this and then to get into that little crawl space area.
I can actually make it.
The utility door that I got through, when I said it was the little slatty doors that you had to push in the middle, that's exactly, I remember being a little bit wider maybe, but that's what it was. I had to push that and they snapped shut, and that was with the sunlight came through those slats, and that was how I was able to find my way to it. And this was the best I can remember of the house layout from a house I've not been in for 33 years. Which is weird because I actually remember this layout better than I remember my own house that I lived in at the time. Like, I'm not sure I could give you a layout of my old house, but this one is burned into my brain. It was the little utility closet there, and that was the front door, and I went that way to get to the kitchen, and the sliding glass door was back that way. And then this was like a dining room. This was all empty at the time. This was the wall that we stood against and hid on. It was right there, and so we could chase each other in a giant circle. I know that's where the garage was, but I never went in there. I just remember that we would ride our bikes up the driveway and then look in the front windows over here. So I remember the garage had to be over in that area. And then when I talk about the store, it was this double glass door. Although it wasn't slidey, it was a pushy door. And I remember it was, you would come in this side, and then the exit was like over here. And you'd walk in there and then turn that direction. Oh, I don't think I told you how I found out how I got caught. It was not video camera. Later on, it turned out I was just an idiot. When I said that I went to the last aisle to rip open the packaging to steal it because there was no one around, I went to this last aisle. Apparently, didn't pay any attention to the fact that one of the walls was a giant glass wall with pharmacists standing on the other side of it. And so I stole it right in front of them. So apparently I walked by, like, ripped it open, and they were like doing like, is that kid stealing right? And are you kidding me? I'm just like, and I just walked by. So that's why he walked out and knew exactly where it was not from checking the camera, but because I stole it literally in front of a giant glass wall with people on the other side of it. So that's sort of how I found things out later from there. And I talked about my mom's gray Pontiac Bonneville that I drove home in. That's what it looked like. Because I found a picture of that too. Law.
So the store that you was it CVS?
No, it's like it's not an Osco, something like that. It's not around anymore.
Costco.
Not Costco. Osco. O-S-C-O. Used to be a store.
Oh, okay.
That's why I said it's not around. Jeff.
Like, so I thought that they didn't check like video until like after the store closed.
Probably. I mean, now they could, like, if they knew that there was a video camera on that aisle and they suspected me of doing it, they could probably go check it. So, but
But it wouldn't take like 4 seconds.
I have no idea. Like I said, I don't think they had a video camera at all. I think he was just bluffing the entire time because I was an idiot child. Because he didn't need a video camera because he watched me do it. Yeah.
How do you know
That he watched me do it.
Yeah.
My friends later on, they described from this because it turns out I was banned and never allowed to go back in the store again. That was one of the conditions. The fact that once I was picked up, the fact that so if I ever went back into the store, I'd be picked up for trespassing. But I had friends who'd gone into the store and they explained how it was laid out, and I'm like, that was so when they were telling me about where everything was, I found out that wall that I walked in front of was the glass wall the pharmacy was. So I was just an idiot.
Why didn't you see it?
Because I was an idiot. You just missed the part where I was an idiot. When you're an idiot, you do like idiot stuff. I don't know.
But I'm not an idiot.
I
would have been like
high hopes someday. And so yeah, I just wasn't paying attention. I was so bent on stealing of it, I just wasn't looking around. I don't know, idiots. So that wrestling that next day, Coach was not happy with me whatsoever. But he didn't really bring it up to me. It was just one of those, for wrestling, there's different things you can do, and Coach decided to make that next day throwing drills. And the way throwing drills work is you get with a partner, and you practice throwing each other to try and hurt them as like takedowns. And the coach picked a partner for me, and he picked a senior that was about 20 pounds heavier than I was, and was all muscle. And so he's like, Broviak, he's like, you're with Doug. And I'm like, Doug? Oh, and Doug's like, boom, boom. He's like, and I'm like, oh, yay. And so Doug got to spend the afternoon throwing me. It was where you do like a headlock, and when you throw someone, they land on their back, and you land on top of them. And Doug would do that like just over and over again. He was like, throw! I'm like, he's like, again! Doug's like, and I go, like, it's like, oh, I felt like I've been punched like over and over again. And he's like, switch partners! I'm like, all right, I'm going to throw Doug. I'm like, ready? And Doug's like, I'm not moving. You can't throw me. And I'm like, you're not fun, Doug. And then Doug would go back to throwing me again. I'm like, So by the end of practice, I was sore. I hurt. But the coach was not done. So at the end of practice, Coach calls us all together, and we're around when he's talking. He's like, apparently, certain people on our team don't respect being on this team, and they've disgraced this team with their choices. I do not like how that reflects on me or the members of this team, and I believe the wrestlers on this team feel the same way. Isn't that true? And they're like, uh-huh. He's like, I think something should be done about this. Don't you think so, men? They're like, uh-huh. And he goes, good. I'll see you later. And the coach walks out. All of these seniors turn to me and smile. And I knew it was not going to be good. So these kids that are all 4 years older than me, they're all 18 or so, and I'm 14, walk over and pick me up and carry me to the back of the wrestling room. And we had what was called a throwing dummy. And a throwing dummy was this 150-pound stuffed fake man. It just stood like this, had like a little fake head on it and fake arms, and it was heavy, 150 pounds. And you would use it to practice throwing so you could get better with your technique and form. And they use what's called mat tape. And mat tape is really thick tape that you use to tape these mats together that weigh like 700-800 pounds. And so it's really hard to tear. And so they held me down on this throwing dummy and then taped me to it. Wrapped the tape around my arms and around my body and around my legs and around my head, not my face. They did wrap it around my head and mat taped me to it. And then took turns throwing me. They would just pick me up and just throw me into the air. And I had no way. It's like, ah! And I just land on my face and it hurt. I had to be snapping in different directions and landing on my body. And then they would do me like a domino. They would like flip me. So I was like, like rolling. Head, feet, head, feet, head, feet. And they just rolled me across and they throw me to each other. Went on for, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes of laughing and having a good time. Till they got done. And at the end of it, they just took me and to the back of the room and just threw me in a corner upside down and turned off the lights and left me. And so I was just I was taped to this dummy. I had no way to get myself down. And I was upside down with my feet in the air, staring into this dark room, thinking, so this is where I am. I was like, it was one of the darkest days I'd ever had. Of trying to just going back and speculating about life and what I had done to get myself there. And I was in there, I don't know exactly, I didn't have access to a watch, 20, 25 minutes. And then a friend of mine snuck in, the kid on the team that I was really good friends with, and he brought a pocket knife with him and cut the tape to get me down because he had to wait until all the seniors left. And then cut me down, and it hurt because I'm part bear. And so from the tape on there, I was not part bear after that. Or on my legs, where I'm also even more bear. Now I was a bear. And so going out and getting picked up, my mom was after way, and she's like, what took you so long? And I'm like, long day. And she's like, did you survive? And I'm like, barely. And so it got better after that. Like the team continued to harass me, but not like that day. I'm looking at it now as a teacher. I'm like, that's the stuff that would get a coach fired or put in jail for doing something like that. But back in the day, it was just like, hey, it happens, which was weird. And so the next couple weeks went by, and it was tough dealing with it, just the comments and from the kids and the self-reflection and wondering what life held in store for me. And then about a month later, I had to go to court to see a judge. I had to dress up in a tie. I got out of school early in order to go down. Have you ever been to Noblesville? They have a town square. It was like a little town square area, and there's a courthouse in the middle of it. And that was where I had to go in front of the judge. And so I went down to this town square and had to go to the little courthouse and talk in front of a judge. Jeff?
Isn't that the old one?
Mm-hmm. There's a new one now, which is across the street, which is back that way. And that was the old, but back in my day, that was the only one that was there before the dinosaurs built a new one. And so I had to wear my little tie and go in front of a judge, just like you see in a court. Except we didn't have a lawyer because I was pleading guilty, I think, because I was only 14. And the judge was up there and like read through everything that I did. And I remember the judge was talking to me, and he was like, "Son," I was like, "Yes, sir." He was like, "So you've never been in trouble with the law before?" And I went, "I haven't," because I was like, when I was 7. But apparently that was not officially on my record, so life was good. And I was like, "No, I haven't." And he's like, "And you have good grades at school?" I did. Beginning my freshman year, I had all A's going into it, so go me on that part. And I was like, "Yes, sir." And he goes, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you what's called deferred probation. And I go, I have no idea what that means. Kind of a first time for me, too. And he was like, here's what it means. He goes, right now, today, you are going to walk away from this courtroom with no punishment as of now. I was like, I like that. And he goes, unless, I'm like, oh, there's a follow-up. If you get picked up for anything, if a cop ever has a reason to type your name into his little machine or radio in and check on your name, then it's going to come back to haunt you. Deferred probation means we are putting off your punishment for a later date until you're 18. The day you turn 18, we will expunge this and wipe it out. But before you turn 18, anytime you're out with friends and you're out past curfew and the cops pull you over and they run your names, you're going to get pulled in and you're going to spend the evening in jail and they're going to call me and you're going to have to come in front of me again. If you're at a party and the cops show up and we run your name, you're going to have to come in front of me in front of this court again. If anything happens and a cop has a reason to run your name, you're going to come back before me. Because on your record, it is going to say the fact that you have a history of making poor choices and the fact that you need to be punished for the full extent. And when you come in front of me, son, you are going to be punished to the full extent of everything I can do for you for this event right now. And I will punish you to the full extent of whatever this new thing is. So if you get picked up for anything, you are going to get hit twice for whatever it is. Do you understand? It's like, I understand. I'm never going to get in trouble again. You're a very nice person. And so basically, as long as I don't get in trouble, I'm fine. If I get picked up for anything, then it's going to be twice as much trouble. And I was like, all right. He goes, I hope I never see you in this courtroom again. I'm like, I hope you never see me in this courtroom again, too. And then I got to leave with my mom. And I was like, that went pretty well. And she was like, not bad. And she was like, don't get in trouble. I'm like, I'm not going to try to. And so that went well. And as far as that went, and it worked to help me make the right choices in high school. Because I had a group of friends who did not make good choices. I had friends who drank and friends who did drugs that I hung out with. Because I'd been friends with them since junior high. And then they went down dark paths. And I didn't want to give them up as friends. But I did not hang out with them while they were doing it. And I never did drugs or drank while I was in high school because of that. Because I was paranoid. And the other thing was my family has a bad history of addiction. The fact that all you have to do is smell a drug and my family gets addicted to it. And so I was paranoid because I saw what happened to my grandparents and my uncle and my family. And so I was afraid to get anywhere near it. So that sort of helped me make my good choices, those sort of two things together. And that guided me throughout high school. I don't know what I would have done in high school if this hadn't been what made me make good choices. I don't know how my choices would have been throughout high school. And I remember it was a couple weeks later. I was still in the middle of, every day, I'd still hear about it, kids in the hallway making fun of me and saying comments and stuff like that. And one day after school, we had a wrestling meet. And I did not leave for the wrestling meets. I stayed at school and just did homework in the hallways. Because I'm like, I'm not going near any stores. I'm not getting in trouble at all. So I was sitting in the hallway one day doing homework. Just sitting on the ground doing it. And I look up down the hallway to my left because I hear someone walking. And it was a kid I recognized who went to school with me, who was like a year ahead of me. But he maybe was in my grade by this time because he'd been held back. He was a thug, and he was a scary country boy. Had gotten kicked out in junior high because for smoking and for picking fights with teachers and stuff like that. And my little skinny boy butt was scared of him. And so I looked up and I saw him walking towards me with his clicky-clacky cowboy boots on. And I was like, oh. And I looked at him and I was like, no, making eye contact. So I kept looking down, like doing homework. I'm like, don't look up, don't look up, don't look up. So like, maybe he'll just walk on by, maybe he won't notice you. And he walked, and I saw his cowboy boots, ka-chinkity, 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 ka-chinkity. And he stopped right in front of me. And I just kept like, not looking. I'm like, I'm not looking up, I'm not looking up. I'm like, just doing my homework, I'm being a good kid. And then they turned, and I could tell he was facing me. And I'm like, he's not leaving. Like, he's not leaving. And then he goes, are you Broviak? I'm like, oh, crap. I'm like, yeah, that's not an accident. So I look up, and he looks even scarier up close. He's like the full like facial hair, beard thing going on. I'm like, you're like 15 years old. And I was like, yeah, I'm Broviak. And he nodded his head, and he goes, You're the kid that got arrested for shoplifting breath spray, aren't you? I was like, yeah, that was me. And he nodded his head. And I was like, all right, I mean, bring it. This kid's going to make fun of me now too. Why not? It's what I deserve. It's sort of what I'm going through. I was ready for whatever this kid could send to me. It was going to make me a stronger person. And I remember I was staring at him, and he kept staring back at me. And what happened next is one of those things that doesn't leave you. Because his expression changed. And he goes, it sucks right now, doesn't it? And I just went, yeah, it does. And he goes, the kids make fun of you? I went, yeah, all of them. And he goes, it's hard at home, isn't it? I was like, yeah. He goes, it gets better. I went, what? He goes, it'll get better for you. You just got to wait a couple weeks and it gets better. I was just like, okay. He goes, when I was in junior high, I stole a bunch of pencils from a store and I got arrested for it. And my old man beat me for it, and my friends made fun of me for it, and I thought it was the end of the world. It was one of the worst things that ever happened to me. But I waited a couple weeks, something else happened, and people forgot about it. So you stay strong. You wait, something else will come up, and people will move on from it. All right? I just went, okay. He goes, all right. And he just walked away. And it was weird that, like, the best advice I got in this whole situation was from this kid that I thought I had pegged as, like, this horrible, scary, thuggy dude. And he wasn't. And it was one of the nicest things, like, a random person has done. And he was right. It was good advice. Within a week or two, something else happened. Kids forgot about it. Things moved on. The only people who still made fun of me were either, like, the jerks at school that no one cared about and my friends. Because that's what friends do. They just keep making fun of me. To this day, they still make fun of me for it, but it's all right. It's what makes you a better person. But it was just the fact that that kid took time out of his day to stop and say that to me. It really impacted me. And so it was good for me, looking back on it. I'm not sure if I would change things. Even though it was a dark time in my life, it made me stronger overall. And I didn't get arrested again for 4 years. Go me. Made it till I was 18. Made it all through high school without getting arrested. Made it to college. Went down to IU Bloomington. And at IU Bloomington, drinking and drugs are everywhere because college kids make poor choices. But I chose not to. And I was honest. And people would ask, like, hey, it's like, we're going to go out to a party. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to. Like, what's wrong, man? I'm like, I got arrested when I was in high school. And I was like, I didn't. Even though my record was supposed to be expunged, I was like, I was past 18. My birthday's in May, hasn't changed. And I was like, I didn't feel like testing it. So I'm like, it's just not worth it. And so I was like, it's all good. And so I did not hang out with other people when they went out to parties. But I made a lot of friends on my dorm floor. And so a lot of kids I hung out with, a lot of kids I got along with. And one of them was Mariah Simmons. And Mo had a birthday in November. And I remember it was for his birthday coming up, the kids on the floor wanted to throw a party for him. They're like, hey, let's all get together and we'll raise some money and we'll throw a party for Mo. And I was like, that sounds like a good idea. And they're like, so we're going to get a bunch of beer and bring it up here to the dorm floor. I'm like, not so good at that part because that's really illegal. It's one thing to drink when you're underage, but you can't have beer anywhere on the IU campus. That's really frowned on. It's like double bad. And I'm like, I'm not going to go to that party. No offense. I'm like, I love Mo. I was like, I'll give you guys money for it, but I don't want to be there for it. And they're like, all right, we understand completely. It's not a problem. But time went by, and they came back like, hey, can we ask a favor? And I'm like, sure. They're like, this is for Mo's birthday. I'm like, absolutely. What else can I do for you? And they go, well, we got a guy who's going to buy the beer for us. This guy that's 21 that lives on the dorm floor, and we're going to give him the money, and he's going to go buy it. I'm like, sounds good. They're like, but we don't have a car. And I was like, oh. Because I was the only kid on my dorm floor that had a car. I had a Mazda RX-7, and I spent all this money to bring down to IU. I had a parking pass, so I could park it next to the dorm. I was all excited. Except it's a two-door. It was a sports car. I was so excited about my sports car. And it was a hatchback, so it had like this glass back area with no seats in it. It was like this flat area that you could put like groceries and things like that. And it's all like vroom vroom. You could drive fast in it.
That's weird.
And it was, and so to take people around in it, being teenagers, we were idiots. We would put the front seat I would drive, I have some in the passenger seat, and this back little hatch area, which is about the size of a large suitcase, we would pack like 4 and 5 kids. And they look like it's smashed like into a fish tank. It's like they'd all be smashed in there, and we'd pop open the trunk, and they kept springing out like clowns from a car. And it was great. And they're like, hey, can we borrow your car to go pick up the beer? And I was like, because the guy who was doing it, who was asking, was a kid named Fish. And Fish was not known for making good choices. And so, they did this last time too. Oh, stupid computer. We'll just take care of it.
sucks.
No one likes computers anyway.
Whoa.
Magic with my hand. It's not going to work, so I have to type in stuff. But yeah. So use your imagination. And so I didn't, and there's not only like one more picture coming up anyway. Fish did not make good choice, and like the last thing I wanted to do was give Fish my car. Be like, hey, take my keys and go drive it. Try not to wreck it. So I was like, I don't know if I don't let you borrow my car. And he's like, please. He's like, that's the only way you can go get the beers. Like, if not, then we have no way of getting it back here. And he kept working on me and kept asking and stuff like that. So eventually he wore me down. And I was like, all right, how about we compromise? He's like, what's your idea? I was like, well, I don't want to let you borrow my car. I'm afraid my parents will yell at me for it. If I have anyone else that wants to sign it, if you're like 50 points or higher, you can come on up. I was like, so here's what I'll do for you. I was like, how about I'll drive you? I will, you guys can get in the car, get the 21-year-old, and you guys can come with me, and I'll drive you to go get the beer. That way I know who's driving it, I'm not worried about it as much, and that should be, he's like, all right, that sounds like a good deal. So the night of the party, I go and take the 21-year-old who sits in the passenger seat, and then Fish comes, because I didn't know the 21-year-old, and Fish was the one organizing it. He's like, I'll come with you. I was like, thank you, because this is some weird kid sitting in the car that I don't want to talk to. And so Fish sat in like this little back area. Stupid computer. Disappear. Rage.
Do you want me to go use your mouse?
I'll walk that way. I'm still talking. And so we went and we drove around to all these different liquor stores that were in Bloomington. And the 21-year-old would run up and buy the beer and then come running back. And then come running back out there, we throw it in the back, and I had a blanket, I would throw over all of it, and we kept buying like these giant cases. I had like, I don't know, 24 and 30 beers in each one, and we'd throw it in the back of my car, and we got multiple cases. It was enough where the back of my car like started riding, like we were going uphill the whole time we were driving. I was like, I'm getting a little nervous, like maybe we should go and drop some of this beer off, because there was a lot in the back. And they were finally like, all right, let's take it back. I'm like, oh, thank God. Because the whole time I'm like getting more and more nervous. Like if I get caught with all this, I'm like, it's definitely going to get me in trouble. So we eventually got back to the dorm I lived at. Seriously, there we go. There we go. The dorm, which is Wilkie at IU. And it's this big 12-story building, like a giant hotel. We lived on the, actually it was like a 14-story, we lived on the 12th floor. And then you had like an elevator that right up there. And I had a parking pass to park in this back parking lot. And you'd park, I remember I parked almost exactly where that car is, except I was facing the trees. And then you'd have to like walk it over here. And we didn't want to get caught, so they had duffel bags. And they were going to just take all the beer, throw it into a duffel bag, and then carry it up the stairs. So we parked facing that way, and there at the back of my car, throwing all the beer into this duffel bag, and I'm watching them throw the beer, and I'm just getting shaky from the nerves. I'm like, oh, I don't want to be here. Way too much beer, so many bad things. I'm like, hey, I have an idea. I go, what's up? Like, why don't I run up to the dorm, and I'll get the other guys, and they can come down and grab it to help you guys out, so you're not carrying it all yourselves. They're like, that's great. I'm like, yes, and it gets me away from the beer. I was like, all right, so I'll take off and go grab it. I'm like, all right, man, take off. So like, you guys keep packing, and I'll go. And so I take off across the parking lot, and was down this little paved area, and I was going to go from there to get in the back to go up the elevator. Got to here, and I remember as I was walking across, voices off to my left, and it was a deep voice like, hey, what you doing? And I look over, and it was 2 cops just walking across the grass. And it's at IU, they have just foot cops just walk around trying to find dumb kids doing dumb stuff. And I'm like, walk into my dorm. I'm going to go up and see some of my friends. I'm like, heading back to my place. They're like, oh. And then all of a sudden their flashlights come on. Click, click. And they both shine on and shine them on me. I'm like, ah. And then they go from me to the right. And they shine them to the car. The parking lot had cars in it, but you could see my friends that were over there. Luckily, my friends had heard them yell at me and had thrown the blanket over all of the beer and then slammed the back of it. The problem is, the back of the car is all glass, so they can slam it, and you can see the fact there's just a blanket covering stuff. And then Fish and the 21-year-old just leaned against the back of the car. They're like, "How are you doing? We're not suspicious at all." And they just sort of leaned back against it. And so they shine it. They're like, "What's going over at the car?" I'm like, "I don't know. I'm going up to my dorm." And they go, "Well, we're going to go over to the car." And I go, "Okay." They go, "Why don't you come with us?" And I go, "No." Because I don't want to. Because I want to go far away in that direction. And they go, "We think it'd be a good idea if you came too." And I just went, "Okay." And so I turned and walked in that direction. And so they walked me over to my car. So we get over there. Fish and the 21-year-old are still leaning against the back of it, trying to look as unsuspicious as possible. Jeff?
Like,
Okay, and so we get over there, and so they shine the flashlights on now you're in my head, on Fish and the 21-year-old, and they're like, "So, how you boys doing?" They're like, "We're doing fine." Like, "What you doing over here?" I'm like, "Just leaning against a car, like people do on a Saturday night." And then they shined it into my back windows, and you could see blankets covering a giant lumpy something. And they're like, "What's underneath the blanket?" And I go, "Car stuff?" Witty. And they go, "Oh, well, why don't you open up the back so we can check out the car stuff?" And I go, "No," because I'd seen cop shows. And I knew that I did not have to open up the back of my car, so I chose not to. And they go, "Okay." And I went, "Oh, well, that was easy. Great." They go, "Well, here's what we're going to do." And I was like, "Oh." They go, "We're going to stand here behind your car." I go, "Uh-huh." And they go, "And we're going to call for a tow truck." I go, "Uh-huh." And they go, "The tow truck's going to come, and it's going to take your car down to the police station. And then we're going to call a locksmith, and the locksmith's going to come and break into the back of your car. And we're going to lift up your trunk, and then we're going to lift up that blanket, and we're going to see what's underneath your blanket. And if there's anything illegal there, then we're going to come back down here to your dorm, and we're going to come up to your floor, and we're going to arrest you in front of all of your friends up there on the dorm floor. If we open up the back and there's nothing there, then we'll apologize, and you can come down and pick up your car. How's that sound to you?" I'm like, "Well, I know there's something illegal underneath the car, or underneath the blanket. There's a lot of something illegal." So I went through my head, I'm standing there staring at the two of them, trying to figure out, is it better to be arrested here, or wait till later and get arrested, plus be charged for the towing bill, and then the locksmith bill, and then the impounding bill. And then so I was like, once again, having to make that choice between where's the better place to be arrested. So I go, "Fine, I'll open it up." And so I took my key and then they lifted up the back of it, and they still remember this to this day too. Lifted open the blanket and threw it back, and at the same time, both cops went, "Oh!" and then they cursed because there was so much beer that there, and they was like, "Oh my God!" And I was like, "That's not a good sound." And they were like, "Son, whose car is this?" And Fish and the 21-year-old at the same time went, "His," and pointed to me because that's what people do. I will be honest, I considered for a moment not claiming the car and just getting rid of it. Like, "I don't know whose car it is. I found it here." And it's like throwing them the keys and like walking away and be like, "You can keep it." But I thought my parents probably frown on me just getting rid of my car because parents don't like that. So I was like, which is worse, getting rid of my car or getting arrested? And so I said, "It's my car." And they go, "Is that your beer?" And I go, "No." And they go, "In your car, it's your beer." And they look to the other two gentlemen, Fish and the 21-year-old, and they go, "Boys, you can leave. Because they're not breaking the law because it's not their car. Technically, they're just standing next to a car. Nothing they can do about it." And they go, "Really?" And the cops go, "Unless you want to stay." And they go, "Nope." And they take off running. And they look to me and they go, "You're under arrest." And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" I'm like, "I don't even drink." And they go, "We don't care." And once again, turning around, handcuffs behind my back, walked me over and they sat me down on this little curb that was right there next to my car. And I sat down on the curb, and I remember sitting there with them talking. And I could look up at my dorm floor, and I could see the 12th floor, which is where I lived. I could see the lights all coming on. And then all like these faces filling it, because all the kids that were over there for the party were looking down and seeing me. And they're like waving at me and stuff like that. And I'm like, I'm waving with one finger, you can't see it. And so there wasn't much I could do as I was sitting there. I remember eventually the police car pulled up and they called for a cop car. And they picked me up and they took me into the cop car. And I remember a couple of things. One, I didn't sit in the front seat this time. I was like, last time I got arrested, I got to sit in the front seat. This time I had to sit in the back seat. So I had to sit in the back seat, and the back seat was not cloth like normal cars. It was hard plastic, like the chairs you're sitting in. Like the whole back seat was that hard plastic. And I remember like, that's weird. And it had like a little hole, like when you sit down, there was a hole in the plastic that I could put your hands in, like a little bunny tail. Because when you sat down, I was like, oh, there's like a little pocket for my hands. It was so neat. And I asked the cops, like while we were driving, I said, why is the back seat all plastic? Like, that's kind of weird. And the officer said, oh, well, we pick up a lot of kids that have been drinking, and they tend to throw up in the back seat. So this makes it easier to rinse it out. I was like, ugh. I'm like looking like, but it was clean at the time. But apparently kids like, and just like throw up everywhere back there. So they just hose it out. I was like, well, it's creative, but disgusting. And they drove me back to the police station. Got my mugshot, which apparently might exist somewhere down in Bloomington. And only had to do the front one. I had to like hold the little thing in front of me, and they took the little picture. I didn't have to do a sideways one, just a front one. And then they let me go. And they were like, all right, we'll contact you in a little bit. And so that was it. Then I had to leave. And being 18 years old, they don't contact your parents because technically I'm old enough to know better. And so I had to tell my parents. Well, that night I was supposed to go to a party because there was a girl I had a crush on, and I was hoping to go flirt with that girl. And that didn't happen because the last thing I wanted to do that night was go flirt with a girl when I was like, hey, I got arrested again. So instead I chose to go home and cry because that's what you do when you get arrested for the third time, the second time officially. And so back at my dorm, my friends were real nice on that one. They didn't make fun of me that time because they felt bad. And they were like, feel bad about you getting arrested. I'm like, yeah. Like, do you think we're going to get the beer back? I'm like, no, I don't think you're going to get any of that back. And that was, for me, the last time I've ever been arrested.
I had to knock on wood.
Yes. Take off. Tomorrow we have one last talk.